to our sessions from Monday, so I did not have the chance, and actually because of being too old, I forgot to say this welcome. So Mr. Mujib Mehrdad is a lecturer for Al Biruni University, as well as the head of the editorial-in-chief of Ashta Soap, one of the famous daily in Afghanistan. Uh, uh, and a person with lots of skills in poetry. Uh, Also, I would like to suggest if we have any changes in our program tomorrow. Uh, uh, Today there was an event that introduced the book of. Let me to show you the book. It is the book. It was officially distributed today. It is Peace and War Journalism. The Peace and War Journalism was published by Mediatek in Afghanistan with the financial support of GIZ, the international German organization. The book is somehow an academic book. Mr. Danish Karukhel, prior to introduction of opening of this book, he had an introduction of it. If there is any change in our program, I would like to suggest Mr. Karukhel to have a kind of introductory uh, 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 session for us of this book. Mr. Danish, is it okay with you? Mr. Danish, can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you. And when I should be ready that to introduce that book? When, like for the coming month or this month?
For tomorrow's session, for tomorrow, yes.
For tomorrow,
Tomorrow, if there is any change in our program, I would ask you to, I would request kindly you to have a presentation of 5 to 10 minutes about this book. Or any other person, if we have more volunteers and have this book, so then I could ask everyone to do it, anyone who wants.
yeah,
Karokhil
but
said yes.
I can prepare that for the next month, not for tomorrow. If someone else is not ready to explain or what it's have, I will be not able for tomorrow, but for the next month, I can prepare a good presentation about it.
If there is any changes in our program tomorrow, I would speak about this book for 5 minutes. And the other announcement is that we have 24 copies of this book at NAI, and it is just collected for participants of this course. So anyone would like to have one copy could come and collect it from NAI, or tell us if they are nearby, we could send it to them. And now we have presentations. Mr. Wahid Mehran. Wahid Mehran has a master's degree from India with brilliant English, as I observed yesterday. So I would like him to start with his presentation. I would request, if possible, to decrease the level of the strongness of your English in a way that I could understand. Please, Mr. Mehran.
That's so embarrassing, Halwatgar said. Thank you so much. Uh, Welcome you all, and I can see my dear and near friend Mujib Mirdad. You're also welcome. It's a pleasure to have you, and also all the other distinguished members of this circle that we have. I'm going to talk about two things today. just briefly, I would first I have to point out that I don't have electricity at home. This is Kabul. It's dark here. I don't have light in my room, and I'm connected through the Wi-Fi of my mobile. So it's not that much reliable. It can be disconnected in any at any moment. So once I'm disconnected, I will try my best to connect through the mobile. I will share my screen with you guys. I have just prepared a few PowerPoint slides, and I will be talking about briefly, just so brief about peace journalism. Um, it has a reason actually why I would want to point out that, and then I will be talking about the findings of my own master's thesis or dissertation, the paper which I had written back in April 2019. Coincidentally, that was written on peace journalism in Afghanistan, and I will be talking more about that. Um, Even talking about peace journalism, the reason behind that is that I came across a lot of important information and essential information to understand peace journalism. Hence, it was the first time, but it was so fruitful for me. Even our dear colleague Elizabeth, we have Rune Ottesen, we have been having him for the first time last year. Actually, I came across his papers. I read some of them and some of the theses written by his own students regarding the ongoing war in Afghanistan. So let me share my screen, and please do tell me if you cannot see the screen.
I would request Shakib to get the permission for Mr. Mehran to share his screen. Shakib,
Yes, they have access to share.
I think I
please,
have
Mr.
access.
Mehran, now you
Just
yeah.
let me check. Yeah, thank you. Um, okay. Can you see it? I can actually maximize
Yes,
the
we can see it.
PPT.
Yes,
Can you see it now? Is it visible?
yes, it is visible.
Okay. So here I have, this is my favorite option. I have laser pointer. We'll be using this throughout the session. It's a brief on peace journalism and the findings of my paper in this regard. Um, I have to mention that I was dealing with this paper back on February, March, and April 2019. And it would just give you a glimpse of what is peace journalism and what I have tried to actually find out of two newspapers in Afghanistan, which are Outlook, the Daily Outlook Afghanistan, the first newspaper, and the second is the Ashtaso, 8 a.m., which we have its editor in chief, Mujib Mirdad, with us right now, too. Actually, now I'm sure that everyone in the circle has a general knowledge of peace journalism. Maybe some points would be some repeated to you, and some points would be fresh and completely new to you. So, in any way, I would be trying my best to actually share with you what is my perspective, um, and what I actually could understand while I was writing. Um, As our dear friend Elizabeth pointed out yesterday about the legacy of Jon Galtung, the Norwegian Jon Galtung, and how he actually changed the face and the pace of journalism, of course. And later we have peace journalism as a real subject taught around the globe in at least more than 40 or 50 universities. But unfortunately, we do not have it as a separate subject taught in our own private or governmental universities in Afghanistan. Just 3 weeks back, I proposed this as a separate subject to our own department, but I'm not sure if they will accept that because it needs a lot of prerequisites to actually make them ready to actually make them understand this. So whatever I have brought in this PowerPoint slide, um, it goes back to the time when I was trying to write my thesis. In 2015, actually, 2005, Jack Lynch and McGoldrick published a book, which was Peace Journalism. And that was, I think, one of the groundbreaking steps in actually enhancing this debate of peace journalism around the world. Peace journalism is rather a solution-oriented approach to the news and reports. It's not just neutrally reporting the incidents, the talks, the happenings around the world, but also trying to actually pave the ground for solutions, to focus more on solutions and to dig deep into the details by broadcasting, by being a facilitator for both parties of the war. Now, yesterday, Mr. Khalwatgar also pointed about the peace journalism and the approach that Afghanistan's media have had since the past 15 or 20 years, and the over emphasizing and overstating or over displaying Taliban and the incidents related to Taliban actually was not quite proper. It was somehow inappropriate. That's what actually I could hear from Mr. Khalwatgar. But let's not forget that peace journalism actually gives a voice to the both parties. Peace journalism is not just about civilians, Afghans dying from an airstrike, but also about the other party, which is the terrorist groups, which is the Taliban. Okay, we live in a country, we are civilians, we are, citizens of this country, we love our country. But we cannot neglect that they are human first. And then maybe they have had motivations that could actually lead toward holding an AK-47 and shooting at people. Now, peace journalism is all about giving voice to the both parties and then laying it down to the people to actually judge who was right and who is wrong. Allegedly, peace journalism has the power to put effort into prevention of wars. And let's not forget that whatever we do as peace journalists, we do it in a soft manner, in a soft principles. Now, I'll be focusing on that later. Now, Jack Lynch and McGoldrick has a definition of peace journalism, which I love it so much. And they say that when editors and reporters make choices of what to report and how to report it, that create opportunities for society at large to consider and to value nonviolent responses to conflict. Whatever happens in the news department, whatever happens in the editorial room, actually paves the ground for the next steps, which is giving the pupil the opportunity to distinguish, giving the pupil the opportunity to actually have their own judgments. So it's so critical and so essential to know this approach while trying to produce or trying to broadcast our news reports um, every night at 6 p.m., for example, news bulletin, which is a norm in Afghanistan. Peace journalism uses the insights of conflict analysis and conflict transformation to update the concepts of balance, fairness, and accuracy in reporting. Now, people have been criticizing that if we are to implement all the elements of Johan Galtung's model, which later I will display it, then what about the fairness? What about the balance? This was a question I actually asked from Rune Ottesen, our colleague, last month, and still I couldn't get a very clear and frank answer to that. That's one of the criticism that that is raised here and there. Builds awareness of nonviolence. I think I bolded this because this is the most important thing. This kind of approach in journalism does builds awareness of nonviolence. Like it's like telling people about the benefits of a fruit. It's about telling people, defining or explaining to people about the color of a flower. Now, fruit, flower, or whatever other phenomenons that we could imagine, all gives us positive vibe, and positive energy, and a sense of non-violence. That was just an example. But while talking about journalism, we can actually build awareness through making non-violent approach bold, making them bold to the audience. Jack Lynch actually has a few details about peace journalism, which is so good to focus. First, take an analytical approach to conflict. Um, okay, I'm just talking continuously. I'm not sure. Are you listening to me, um, Mr.
Of
Khalwatgar?
course, of course,
Yes,
yes.
we are.
Okay, okay. Thank you. Take an analytical approach to conflict, seeking opportunities to identify parties, goals, needs, and interests. Now, let me mention an example. We have had our colleagues like Sharif Amiri in this panel, in this circle, who is going to the front line of the battleground happening between Afghanistan police forces or military and the Taliban. And a few occasions I have noted down that he is giving voice to not just our own military forces or the governmental forces, but also the other parties. Um, and in between, civilians are one of the parties that should be given a voice. And this culture should actually prevail more than what it is, more than the current status. Like Kunduz was invaded by Taliban, and Mr. Amiri went there and had interviews with the civilians, with those people who were victims, who lost their near ones and dear ones. It's like actually classifying and distinguishing both the parties, or if there is a third party too. So that's one of the things that happens in peace journalism, which did not used to happen um, in Afghanistan. Second, project a multi-party conflict model rather than a Manichaean tug of war. It is projecting a multi-party conflict model. What does it mean? Actually, Mani, I'm sure our dear colleagues have have heard this name. Moni was a prophet, allegedly a prophet who used to live in Mesopotamia and Babylon and this peace journalism actually stands against that kind of perspective and that approach. It is more about win and win situation. It is more about non-zero sum game situation, which I will actually display the graphic later about the zero sum and non-zero sum and how does it relate to peace journalism. Third, find room for perspectives from beyond the usual official sources. It is about actually referring to the unofficial sources, to the people, to the civilians, and the other sources that we can imagine. Fourth, seek out peace initiatives as well as PICs or opportunities to report on them. Now, let's remember that we are not peace builders. We are not, as peace journalists, we are not an NGO or a non governmental organization working to prevail peace in a country. That's not our work. We could just pave the ground for the discussions. We can actually enhance the talks on peace and the peace journalism. We can just initiate, but we are not those people to advocate for peace. Now, I will be talking about peace advocacy. It's not that we have to advocate for peace. In a state, it's an approach aimed at giving peace a chance. I have bolded this. This is, I think, the most important, one of the most important sentences. It is like paving the ground to give a chance for peace, especially in a society or in a country which has been badly hit by battle and by war and terrorism. Um, Here, Jack Lynch and Johan Goltung, uh, they actually define it like peace journalism is a serious, inquisitive, professional reporting, making conflict more transparent. Making conflict more transparent. Now, conflict and war are actually two different phenomena. Um, in general, in Afghanistan, maybe most of us think that conflicts are what we call battle or war. We call it in Persian kashmakash. Conflicts actually, some argue that it's good. It's good to have conflicts. And these conflicts may pave the ground for actually a discussion, for a panel, to talk on the differences the first party and the second party or the third party have. Maybe that conflict can serve as a panel. Now, okay, this is a lot, I think. I would not read it, but I can just tell you what is it talking about. It's mostly talking about this graphic um, of zero sum game and non-zero sum game. Those of you who have a political tendency and who have studied politics or international relations, I'm sure you guys know zero sum game. But peace journalism is not about zero sum game. It's about non-zero sum game. In zero sum game, actually, you have, as you can see, which I hope you can see it clearly, you have two circles, you have two parties, in fact. The first party would argue that this is my interest, and whatever it takes, what's important for me is that I win. The second party which let's give an example, which is Taliban, for example, confronting the government of Afghanistan, the Republic government of Afghanistan. They have their own interests. They would also, on the other hand, want to win. Now here, both of the parties want wins, just like the peace talks going on in Doha or going on in the past 2 years. What happens here in the zero-sum game, that one of the parties win and the other lose. And then we have win versus loss. And in the zero-sum game, they are opponents. When I win, you lose. When you win, I lose. The battleground or the talks or whatever it is. Now in non-zero-sum game, quite vice versa. You have the circles, but the both circles has an area of overlapping interests, have a shared area of interest, which is win versus win or win-win. Now, if I win, that means that you win too. If I lose, that means the loss of the second party, the other party, which is you. And in the non-zero-sum game, you're not just an opponent. You're not my opponent. You are my partner. We win together and we lose together. I think this is a good example of the way we have to approach to the news reports we have been talking about in Afghanistan. Elizabeth, I'm sure you are done with the writing so that I can change this slide. Now this is that model of Jon Galtung. I would not focus more on this. I think in the very first month, maybe Rune Ottesen has displayed this. I actually saw it in YouTube, so I will just briefly talk about it. Johan Galtung gives this model, presents this model of war/violence journalism versus peace, which is conflict journalism. Now, what happens? You have four categories here. You have the war journalism, which focuses on violence. It is violence orientated. And you have peace, which is more conflict orientated. Now, peace journalism is talking about the distinguishes the conflicts, or even, if I may say, the conflict of interests that the both parties, or if there is the third or fourth parties, all those parties have. The second one would be propaganda orientated. War and violence journalism is all about propaganda. It focuses on the political propaganda, while peace journalism is a kind of approach that is trust orientated. It's trying to actually build this atmosphere of trust between both the parties. The third category is elite orientated. As a war journalist or violence journalist, maybe they would tell you that you need to focus on elites. Or the embedded journalists that we have around the world, and especially after the collapse of Taliban regime, post 2001, we have had hundreds or maybe tens of embedded journalists coming to Afghanistan and trying to broadcast the incidents. Now, what happens? Those embedded journalists, if they go on according to the policies framed by the NATO or even Norwegian forces, they may focus more on elites. They may not find the ground to actually focus or concentrate more on details. But on the other hand, peace journalism is all about people. It's about mass, which we say the public. They are the people which actually matters for us. Of course, elites would be another group, They also matter, but in a general concept, elites are also part of the pupil. So there is no distinguishment between elites and the pupil based on their background, the wealth, the fame they have, the position they have, the political communication they have gained throughout the years. All these elements does not matter at all. And the fourth category is victory orientated. War or violence journalism is all about winning, win-win situation. Sorry, it's about winning versus losing situation. My victory matters wherever it takes, whatever it is at stake. And at the same time, you have, I think we have
May I ask Mr. Ghafuri to
Ustad Ghafuri.
Mr. Asif Ghafuri to mute his mic.
Um,
Sorry, Mr. Shakib, could you mute Mr. Ghafuri's mic, please?
Hola.
Khola.
Sorry for the disturbing. Sorry, I unmute unintentionally.
It's okay, Ustad Ghafuri. You're my colleague. I love you, so I will ignore it.
Please
Thanks
go
so
ahead,
much.
Mr. Mehran.
Yeah. Okay, I was talking about the fourth category, which we had victory oriented and solution oriented. Now, in conflict journalism or in peace journalism, we would mostly focus on seeking solutions. And that's the model Ian Galtung has been had presented years back. And let's go to the next slide. Now here, I have to say something about our dear colleague, Ronnie Ottesen, since he has been working on peace journalism for the past couple of years or decades even. And if I'm not wrong, he is also Norwegian. While I was trying to read materials for my thesis, master's thesis, I came across some of the papers which was written by Professor Ronnie Ottesen, and also some other thesis papers written by his students on the war in Afghanistan. So that was quite interesting to me. He actually, I will be giving examples of what did he cover so briefly. Just if I'm correct in pronouncing these, Aftenposten and Verdensgang, Elizabeth, which they also call it VG, right? So these were the papers, the newspapers or periodicals being published in Norway mostly.
They are the two largest papers in Norway, just for your information.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So he actually worked, he was trying to implement the elements of this model, the very model that I just displayed to you, to implement those elements or those sections on the ongoing war in Afghanistan. And now, if I can recall it, in a study, he actually focused on the first week of war in November 2001 in Afghanistan. And the other one was, of course, on July 2002. What happened here? There was an airstrike happened in a corner of this country, and civilians got killed. There were a lot of people who lost their lives and who got injured. And the next day, there was this title in one of these Afghan question of Vedensgang. The title was "Mistaken Bombing May Have Killed 120 Afghans." So that was the title, the headline of that news, and the story quoted the Pentagon source that they admitted that a bomb was accidentally dropped on a wedding party, and people got killed. And on the following day, this Afghan Postan paper followed up with a longer story about the incident, and they actually reduced the number of the casualties to at least 40. Now, what does Ronnie Ottesen or his students sum up from this is um, to name all evildoers. I mean, that is one of the elements of peace journalism model that Johan Galtung has been trying to present. While maintaining this kind of approach, you need to actually not distinguish between elites and the people. I mean, there have been an airstrike and it has killed people. We don't have any distinguishing here. We have these soldiers, which allegedly there was also Norwegian forces from your country up on the air while this strike happened. We need to actually name them, and we do not need to reduce the numbers just because our own soldiers, our own country's soldiers have been fighting there. So this is one of the incidents, one of the many incidents that happened. And the next day, instead of actually revealing the whole truth about 120 Afghan civilians, um, death, they actually came across praising the Norwegian soldiers as skillful soldiers. So you see, that's how actually we won't get along. We won't reach to any point by approaching these kind of journalism, and that's exactly what peace journalism stands against. Let me give you two another examples briefly. In 2006, Roseland, which is a student of um, Ronnie Ottesen, he actually talks about the treatment of prisoners by Norwegian soldiers in Afghanistan, um, keeping in mind these elements or the elements of this very model presented by Johan Galtung. In another thesis, there was another student of Mr. Ottesen, which actually focused on the Washington Post and the New York Post in the US and the Afghan Post of Norway. Let me see the chat. Okay, Rosalind is a woman. Yeah, it's I think Erin Rosalind. So in another thesis, Christian Hogg in 2007 concentrated. Now I'm not sure whether Christian is a woman or a man. Elizabeth. He or she analyzed
It's a man.
actually. Okay, he analyzed the coverage of the newspaper on an attack in Shokir Kalan, which happened on 23rd of October 2001. And it has a lot of details. What they found out was that all the incidents happening in Afghanistan through the soldiers that you can see grabbing a gun has been somehow in some places, in some points, been misled and misreported by the media, and it stands against the very model of Johan Galtung. And the other point is actually confronting as versus them. I think this is one of the points that we have to bear in mind, that there is no us versus them in while talking about the kind of approach we have in peace journalism. Um, we cannot distinguish them into our friends and our enemies and then work accordingly. That's what stands against the principles of what we call peace journalism. Okay, these are the two pictures I just selected to show you the civilians after allegedly airstrikes happened in Afghanistan. And this is what it looks like. Anyway, that was the first part of my presentation. I hope you guys are not bored because I talked a lot.
Mr. Mehran, do you want to
Yes.
receive questions for the first part and then continue with the second part, or you want to continue it?
I would prefer
I
to
I
go
would say
along.
that
I
it
mean,
was brilliant.
yeah, thank you. Thank you. I would prefer to get along with this and finish the slides because there is no trust here in Kabul. I don't have electricity. No, I don't have charge for my laptop and mobile and all that.
Please.
Anyway,
Mr. Mehran, are you here? No guarantee. You're very right. Mr. Mehran?
I think we lost him.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Just while he was about to start with the Afghan analysis. That's a pity.
Yeah.
Do you think?
I would like to ask others if anyone has a comment so far. We could share the comment or any kind of saying about the presentation. And then I hope we could get in Mr. Mehran back. Anyone want to comment? The floor is his or her.
I think it was a great presentation. Hope he could come back.
The same hope is sharing between everyone. Yes, Mr. Amiri.
Yeah, just I wanted to ask him as a war journalist. That I want to know that in a war zone like in Kunduz and Helmand, that everything is destroyed. How can we report a non-violence report? I hope I can give a great answer from him. Because from that situation, I do very in a bad position. So how can I report in a war zone that I show for my people hope? It's a very tough job for me, and it has been a tough job for me always.
Thank you.
He's back now.
Mehran is back.
Yes, I'm back, and
There is a
just as I
question
was,
for you, but I will
yes,
read the question at the end.
okay, just as I was talking about my laptop, the charging and electricity, it went out. It is down now. So again, I'm connected through my mobile, and let me try to share, if I can do it, share my screen with you guys and try to share the material so that we can talk about it in a proper manner. Okay, I think you guys are seeing my screen.
Yes.
Can you see it?
Yes.
Yes, we can see.
Yeah, but here
Yes, we see it.
I may receive private messages and all that, so please ignore it because I have shared the whole screen with you guys. Okay, Now that was the first part, which was all about the findings and the things that I read last year about peace journalism in Afghanistan. Now let's bear in mind that in Afghanistan, I couldn't find a single thesis written on peace journalism, and maybe that thesis was one of the first steps toward you know making it prevail a little bit. Because while trying to read the literature of the subject, I couldn't find a single thesis written on peace journalism. Anyway, this is the second part. Since this is PDF, I would not have the other beautiful options that the PowerPoint slides have. Um, this study was and is actually a content analysis of 140 volumes of two newspapers, which are Daily Outlook Afghanistan and Nash Tasuk, which is 8 a.m. Active in Kabul, Afghanistan. The purpose was to find news stories or articles that had a peace-related approach or gave a clear vision about peace journalism in printing media of Afghanistan. Now, the whole paper, the whole thesis, is 71 pages, and it has a lot of details. Research, methodology, and all that is not my expertise, so I will not go into the methodology and what is content analysis and all that. What matters for us in this circle is the findings that I have had from these 140 volumes of two newspapers. Um, I had actually selected this time frame, November and December 2018 and January 2019, the very first month of 2019 was selected for the story. It is too difficult to talk about a newspaper to cover everything about it. I just confined it to November, December 2018 and January 2019. And in these selected months, Daily Outlook Afghanistan had published 76 volumes, while 8am had published 64 volumes of newspaper. And what happened? I had to read all of them, whatever they have. And fortunately, I had access online. I was in India and I could have access online and download every tiny detail of those newspapers and read them. From those 76 volumes of Daily Outlook Afghanistan, 228 articles were chosen. And from 64 volumes of 8am, 144 articles were chosen, which collectively made a total of 372 articles. So for this paper, actually, I had to read 372 articles that had a peace-related approach to the news stories. Those were the times when these peace talks were flaming and people were talking about them. And later they went to Russia and all that happened. But my concentration was not just peace talks, because that's not something permanent. I was merely focusing on the content of these two newspapers. How does the media, and mainly print media, narrate news stories in Afghanistan? How do they present it actually? Print media. Does their approach in news storytelling pave the ground for some solutions to the disputes in a country which has suffered or is suffering from continuous acts of terror and the Taliban, or it's happening vice versa? Are we doing something to actually making peace and non-violence bold or not? Or does the printing media make it worse by delivering war-stricken news stories only as a witness of the incidents each day? So what's our approach? That was something I bear in mind. Uh, let's see what happens. Um, most of the scholars of journalism feel, since this circle is all about uh, journalists, you distinguished guys, you know that apart from informing, educating, and entertaining people, some will argue that actually media leads the direction of a society. So, how do you lead the direction of a society? How do you lead a society? Um, through your soft power, through the medium that you have, and through these waves that you broadcast to the people and the programs. On a daily basis, people indulge and connect with the media and news stories consciously and unconsciously. Apparently, media have an influence on society. In a war-stricken country like Afghanistan, how well do these newspapers contribute to the journalism of peace, or do they drive in the opposite direction? That was a question posed by me to actually find a response to that. All 140 volumes were read thoroughly to give a clear picture of the purpose of the present study. Eventually, okay, I just talked about this one. I will skip this. The objectives were mainly three things: to find out the proportion of content that facilitates peace, solution, talks, actions, hope, and other elements, which I'll be talking about. The second objective was to compare the peace-related content of the two aforementioned papers, Daily Outlook Afghanistan and Hash the Soap, 8 a.m. And the third objective was to have recommendation to the stakeholders in this regard, in the regard of peace journalism. Now, what happens in order to do this content analysis, apart from reading all those articles, we had to, um, of course, with the contribution of my instructor, define some parameters and lead the way in alignment to those parameters decided. So there were 6 parameters which were as following. The first were writers. This parameter defines whether the writer of the article is from Afghanistan or abroad. The second was countries discussed in the article, which was United States of America and Afghanistan, and how do they relate with these peace approach. And the third was the proportion of peace-related headlines. I actually read at least all of those headlines to see what is the proportion of a peace-related approach or the exact word peace. Fourth was length of the articles. I think we do not have anything to do with this one, at least in this panel, which I divided the length of the articles into short, average, and long. The fifth was how many headlines have these words. Now, this is one of the most important things which I focused and which matters to us. Those words were these: peace, Afghanistan, United States of America, war, Taliban, and the word kill or killed, the both versions. And the last one, the last parameter was essence or message of the headlines. What is the message? Actually, headlines. Why headlines? Because headlines are what grasps the attention. Headline attracts the audience or the reader of that certain print media. So that's why it was important to us. If you have a groping headline, if you have an attractive headline, I think most probably the reader would continue to read your story. So these essence or message of the headlines were hope, grief, solution, talks, action, event, strategy. What makes it more actually somehow amazing is these hope and grief and the way they are confronted in this paper. Okay, this is the whole content. This is the detail of the chapters. It was divided into 5 chapters. I will not go into the details. I can focus it. I'm not sure if it's happening the same to your screen too. We have introduction, review of literature, we have methodology, and we have result and discussion, and the last chapter, which was summary and conclusion. So I will escape the details here. I'll just directly go to the findings. Again, I would want to mention that it is a paper of 71 pages, and it took a lot of time and patience and energy actually to find these results. The findings of this study indicated that the word peace throughout those 3 months that was predefined for this study, this word peace was mentioned more than any other word in all the articles analyzed based on the parameters that actually I just displayed to you. This is a big thing to do actually. Maybe this was intentionally done or unintentionally by Outlook Afghanistan and 8 a.m. newspapers, but peace was the most um, frequently used word. Peace, actually, this word was mentioned almost 3 times more than the word Taliban, which is another finding. And this word was mentioned 13 times more than the word war. So, see, in war journalism and in peace journalism, as I displayed the Johann Galtung model, it is some kind of versus, like peace versus war, a confrontation between these two elements or phenomena. And when your result, your finding elucidates that peace has been mentioned 13 times more than the war, it gives a positive vibe actually. It could be vice versa. It could be on the contrary, that the war was mentioned 13 times more than peace. Then that gives us another message, which is all about being stricken, being, somehow seeing the world from a different perspective. And also, this mere peace word was 75 times mentioned, 75 times more than the word kill. It was somehow compared to the words Taliban, war, and kill or killed. So, of course, when headlines attract you as a reader, and good headlines, beautiful headlines attract you more, this matters to us. The word peace matters to us. The word war and the word kill matters to us. From a psychological perspective, just yesterday, uh, actually, my father, psychologically, he had some kind of, you know, um, panic attack. The whole day I was dealing with that in the hospitals, and one of the reason is the reports being broadcasted through the media in Afghanistan, and especially the attack which happened on Kabul University and on Yamosewash. They had clear impact on him, and he is still suffering from that. I think the mere word, since print media is all about words and visuals through words, this word kill or war matters. Okay, this is one of the major findings of this study. It shows a sense of positivity and enthusiasm for peace and nonviolence. It indicates that the selected newspapers have had tendency to call for peace rather than war and violence. The next thing is talks, which is classified under a different parameter, were the most occupying message. What is the message of this news story or this news report? Um, that message, which were solutions, talks, hope, grief, and all that, talks were the most occupying message. Maybe especially because since last year and the past 2 years, we have been dealing with these peace talks. The solution was the second most occupying message in those news reports. And meanwhile, we have a comparison of hope versus grief. So, hope surpassed 5 times more than grief. Um, it has a graphic actually. It's like comparing two things, and it has a complicated process to find this finding. That's why I'm not going through the details. It may need a lot of time. But what I could find is that the word hope, sorry, the message hope, or the essence hope, was actually more than grief, uh, 5 times more than grief in proportion or in percentage. This also defines a sense of hope and interest toward positivity and hope, because hope, talks, and solution are some of the most important elements to be considered while talking about peace journalism. That's why they matter. Agony, pain, grief, sorrow, tragedy, all these comes under this word grief. And then you have the word hope, which surpasses the grief with 5 times more in proportion. I think this may be the last page. Um, I could also compare both the papers, um, which was Daily Outlook Afghanistan and 8 a.m. DOA, or Daily Outlook Afghanistan, possessed the absolute majority of headlines that had a message of hope and solution. And let me tell you, Daily Outlook Afghanistan is the first independent newspaper in Afghanistan written in English medium. And of course, 8 a.m. is one of the largest, uh, that it has a huge distribution, or maybe the biggest distribution in our country when I was writing this paper. I'm not quite sure right now. I think it stays the same. It may stay the same. Um, so yeah, when comparing these two newspapers and talking about the messages they actually illuminates, um, Daily Outlook of Afghanistan seemed more hopeful and had more talks about hopes and solutions to the current disputes and conflicts in Afghanistan. This shows that DOA had more coverage and a tendency toward giving the message of hope and finding solutions for the ongoing war in Afghanistan. Although both of them, DOA and 8am, possessed almost the same proportion of headlines, which gave the message of talks. About the talks, when the message is about peace talks, they had uh, almost the same proportion. Um, Daily Outlook Afghanistan had an absolute majority of headlines, which give the sense of actions, events, and a strategy. Okay, this was some kind of comparison between both the newspapers, but what matters that both of these newspapers actually had those elements which we are trying to trace down while talking about peace journalism. To conclude, the present study shows that both the selected newspapers were extremely enthusiastic about peace, solution, and talks, mainly peace talks. Although peace talks was not my initial concentration, but it was a part of this paper. So both of these newspapers were actually interested in peace, solution, and talks rather than war or the Taliban. That's, I think, the biggest finding of this paper. The selected newspapers seemed hopeful and less grief-stricken. They enhanced positivity. The Daily Outlook Afghanistan newspaper looked more hopeful. It was optimistic and seemed pragmatic in writing solutions for the ongoing war in Afghanistan. Also, I think the last category was talking about United States of America and Afghanistan and its involvement in Afghanistan. And that study indicated that USA still makes news headlines and stories with their political involvement in Afghanistan. Thank you so much. I think that's all from my end. It was, I talked a lot. So that's all. I don't have anything to say more than this.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mehran. You, your brilliant presentation had lots of things for talking. So I would like to ask others if they are having comment or question, either write through chat or raise the hand. I have a question from Sharif Amiri. Uh, according to the question, what I noted here, he's asking, when I was in Kunduz, and there was always and everywhere the war and killings and things like this, how could I report nonviolence through nonviolence approach?
Okay, thank you, Sharif Amri. I think I mentioned earlier, the answer lies in that description that I gave. This interest or not interest, this approach to give the civilians and those who have had casualties a voice, I think they are also one party. They're also counted as one party that most of the time they bear loss in a battlefield. Why did I mention that specific report? It was because last semester I was teaching the subject reporting, and I displayed your report for the students, and we were talking about elements of reporting in Afghanistan and how it is done. So that was maybe coincidentally we went through your report, and people, students, had their own comments on that. From the start of the report till the end, how do they interview and how does it happen? Anyway, that was the reason that I mentioned that report. But I think, like, what was the reason? Why did Taliban invaded Kunduz after another? I mean, it was the second time they seized the whole city in the last 3 or 4 or 5 years. What was the motivation? What do they want? These are the questions that should be asked and that should be responded by the relevant party, which is Taliban. Although in that report we could not see that. I mean, that's difficult. You have to rely on the other party, and you have to trust him, which is difficult. But somehow, in some points, it has been done by our media. Maybe peace journalism is all about giving voices to all the parties involved in a war situation, whether it is Taliban, whether it is civilians, whether it is our own government.
Thanks, Dr. Mehran.
Yeah.
Thank you. I have a hand raised, Ms. Najiba Ayubi, please.
Thank you very much. It was very good presentation. As I joined late, I think I didn't know this study done by whom. I want to know this, and also I want to ask if it's possible to have this presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Najiba. It's good to see you again. This was a part of my thesis research. I have done my master's in India back in 2019, and I had to write a thesis after having consultations with the friends and all that. I chose to talk about peace journalism, which was a new subject in Afghanistan. And that's actually done by me. The findings, everything else, with the contribution of course, an instructor, which was Dr. Ami Devatia, she was called. And I'm not an expert of research, but of course, when you're studying your master's or bachelor's or whatever it is, you need to have a research done. So that's why. And for the second part of your question, actually, I've intended to make an academic paper out of this thesis and publish it very soon. Once it is published, changing thesis into an academic paper requires some time. You have to narrow it down. You have to make it small to just 10 or 15 pages. Once it is published, I will definitely share the link in this WhatsApp group and also personally to you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Mehran. As Elizabeth wrote to everyone, all presentations are being shared and disseminated among the participants. I have a question myself, Mr. Mehran. The
Yes.
question is about one of the definition you said, uh, uh, peace journalism is a non-violence approach of doing journalism. And then on the other part, you said that is all about people. When there is a massacre, when there is a mass killing, and it's all about people, how we can report it through non-violence approach?
Well, what do you think? Taliban or any other terrorist groups are not counted as people?
I'm not saying they are not people. What I'm saying is the uh, the limitation you said, or you told that non-violence approach is the uh, is the base for doing peace journalism. There is a massacre, there is a mass killing, and it's all about the people, and we have to report it. How?
Well, of course, I think when I started to talk about this, or maybe it was in the middle of the presentation, I also stated my own question from Ronnie Ottesen, which was quite similar to your question, and I couldn't get my response. But while preserving a peace journalistic, for example, approach, we need to keep in mind that it does not mean to actually uh, bring more or less changes to the way we see the reports, the incidents. It's not that you have to make something fake. It's not that you need to blur the whole picture, the whole big picture, which should be displayed to the pupil. But it's about um, the editors as defined by Jack Lynch and Abel McGoldrick. It is the editorial department that actually can preserve this kind of approach, and they can actually decide what should be broadcasted and how it should be broadcasted. Now, I'm not getting the details of your question, but what I could understand from your question is that how can we preserve this non-violent way of doing journalism? I think we don't need to actually fake anything. We don't need to blur the big picture, which is a right of audience and the readers that read our newspaper, or the audience that listen to our programs. We don't need to do those things. What we have to do is to create a platform, create a chance, an opportunity to the pupil to know all the parties. And what do we know? Maybe displaying the terror is somehow making pupil or compelling pupil to understand the vicious, the dark face of war. Maybe that's something that affects vice versa. But overall, I would focus. I would say that we need to give voices to the both parties while trying to cover a war, a battle. The civilians are one of the groups that are being neglected most of the time. We have to have their interviews. In Afghanistan, what do we are supposed to be pro-government. I mean, even in the media spectrum, I have personally analyzed, that we think that we are civilians of this country. We need to be pro-government. We need not to, like the same thing that you said yesterday, we need not to overstay Taliban. But why don't we actually have this different perspective of letting the other party say their own, whatever belief, religious belief or comment they have. In peace journalism, maybe there is no Taliban, there is no government, there is no, pro-government or against government kind of approach. We need to give voice to all the parties. And actually, let me add this also, that we can just give glimpse, small, tiny glimpse of peace journalism to the people. But most of the time, we forget that we are not peace advocates. I mean, you cannot, in a report, you cannot personally come and draw, what do you say, a pigeon, which is a symbol of peace, by yourself. But maybe if there is a civilian who is actually eager to experience peace and tranquility in his country, in his homeland, he can draw a piece, a pigeon symbol of the peace. Now, what happens here, since I have been a reporter, most of the time we forget to record or to actually gather information from all the dimensions related to one certain incident. Maybe there are people, there is a kid holding a bullet. There is a kid actually drawing a pigeon. This is the time, actually, the moment that we distinguish. You, as a reporter, what would you do? What would you decide on that very moment? I mean, I have seen reporters who have overstated the violence, and that's a truth. That's a bitter truth in Afghanistan. I think that example would be a good way to highlight peace journalism in Afghanistan or in a global scale. What would you record? That kid drawing a pigeon or that kid holding a bullet? And suppose that you have only 5 seconds. I mean, inside your mind, when you're when you're drafting your report, your TV report, you may think that, okay, I can actually shoot this one. I can take the picture of this kid and I can use it in my report. How would you distinguish? That's the moment I think that peace journalism approach gives meaning. Um, and that's my response to you, Alwat Karsai.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mehran. It does make sense a lot. Thank you for this. I have seen once Mr. Mehrdad's hand uh, raised, and then I'm not seeing it now. Mr. Mehdad, your microphone is muted. Can you unmute it, please?
Yes, yes. Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. First of all, thank you, my friend, for your brilliant presentation. Actually, in Afghanistan, for example, what we are doing in our newspaper is to give voice to civilian casualties. If I give you an example, for example, an incident which happened in Kabul University, and which the incidents which are happening on daily basis in Afghanistan. Unfortunately, we are facing only, the people, the media, the parties are talking about the numbers. They have turned casualties and civilians into numbers. What we started this week to do is to start profiling those casualties, to give them a voice, because these people are not only numbers, they have their own stories, and I think by bringing those stories to the surface, we can advocate peace. I don't know. I'm mixing two things, that how we can say that, for example, talking about casualties, about the bitterness of war is something different from advocating for peace. Maybe we need more explanation on this regard. For example, we are profiling the civilian casualties of last incidents in Kabul. And our purpose is to give voice to to give a clear picture for the conflicting parties, that how their war is affecting people's life. And these peoples are not only numbers. These peoples have their own stories. They have their families. They are in deep grief. So I want to ask the question in this way: how you distinguish between advocating and talking about the civilian casualties, when, for example, a newspaper is reporting?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mirdad Aziz. Again, it's good to have you. I think basically the scientists, those people who have worked on peace journalism, what I could understand from them, whether it is Johan Galtung, the person who initiated this type of approach, whether it is Jack Lynch or McGoldrick, a novel, or whether it is our own Rona Tussen or colleague Elizabeth. I think what I could understand is that it's very difficult and complicated to keep the line unbiased and at the same time advocate for peace. I mean, we are not a certain NGO working for the peace building in Afghanistan. How would you do that? Why wouldn't you open an NGO to just talk about peace? But what happens in Afghanistan is that the same thing that you give example, you have tried to talk to bring those civilians and the casualties and the pain and the grief that they have been through to the surface, to tell the people that this is what happens, this is the consequence of the war and the battle. I think this is the utmost limit we could do. Other than that, while delivering a report, we as a peace journalist or we as a mere journalist cannot do anything else. I mean, personally, what would you do as a reporter? Nothing. You would just, our profession always, it has declared our footsteps. You need to do this. These are the elements, these are the principles, and one of the most important principles are being impartial. So if you yourself, as a reporter, you're holding a picture of a civilian, a picture of a kid who has died, and displaying it to the audience, that does not make sense. That may stand directly against the element of impartiality that I just talked about. Even this is a question for myself, and I asked the same question from Roni Ottesen, and this is the third time I'm sharing this, that I couldn't get a clear response. But I would add this, that we are not advocating for peace, because see, we are making reports. I mean, we are not we are just a mere reporter. We are not a peace advocate. We are not a social influencer. We are not a jihadist. we are not somebody related to a certain civilian who has lost his life, for example. We are not their brother or whatever. Even if, God forbid, we lose our brother, we cannot mourn. We cannot even, we are not permitted to prepare a report which elucidates the tone of mourn in that, the tone of pain. Because whatever matters in journalism is to impartially reflect the incidents and impartially tell the stories and let the people judge.
Yes,
Thanks,
but
Mr.
sorry, I want to add something. But in your dissertation, my friend, you were focusing on some specific words. I mean,
Yes.
for example, when you're talking about the peace journalism in our newspaper, you are saying that,
Yes.
for example, in those articles that you have analyzed, you said, for example, we were focused on peace word.
Yes. Yes.
And you're revealing that word. It means you're, for example, of course, when we are working, we are not taking side in a conflict, but we are
Yes.
taking side. We are taking the side of the people, the casualties, and we are showing the people that, for example, we are showing the parties that what you are doing is wrong because it
Now
caused.
let me ask you a question,
Okay.
Mirdad.
Okay.
See, November, December 2018 and January 2019, of course, you are not the editor-in-chief that time.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
right now that you are, while choosing headlines for a certain news story, do you guys concentrate on the word? I mean, that was a predefined, a time scale that I defined for myself. I'm
Okay.
not pretty sure that those editor-in-chiefs of both the newspapers had a presumption of choosing certain words, but this paper could reveal that maybe unintentionally they are going toward a good process or a good path.
Yes, of course, of course. But when we are, for example, when I'm writing editorials, uh, of course, I'm not. We are showing that we are impartial, but in the depth of my heart, I take the side of
Yes.
casualties and civilians.
Yes.
And for example, we are blaming the parties for violence they are doing, for causing grief for the people. Of course, it is very easy question that in journalism we have to be balanced, we have to be impartial. But for me, I think it is very difficult to distinguish between that, again, that reporting about the violence, about the sufferings that the people experience, and about being impartial. Still, I'm not convinced, but thank you very much for your clear answer. You're
Yeah,
talking on the
thank
piece
you.
of
That
principle.
is,
Yeah.
yeah, thank you. Thank you,
Yeah.
Mirdad. That is the only question maybe I myself even have. And I hope till the end of this 1 year session, I think at least we will get the answer of that question. But
Thank you.
you talked about parties. I think you said that maybe unintentionally you cannot be impartial. I think that's a general understanding, and I think that is true. Nobody is impartial naturally, and literally everyone is partial and have their own interests, even while I think choosing certain words for a headline. But let's not forget that for you guys, if there is an airstrike done by the government forces and it has killed people, that you also broadcast. That's not something that you will deal with it. I mean that you will neglect.
Yes, of course.
That's all about peace journalism. Maybe that's not all about peace journalism, but one part and one proportion of peace journalism is all about revealing those things and not just being pro government or against government.
Yes,
Thank
of
you.
course. Thank you.
Thank you, Mehran and Mehrdad Saib, for your comment. One sentence from my end. I've learned sometimes back that taking the part of the people is impartiality, or being at the side of the people is impartiality. Now, I think Ms. Elizabeth has some comments or question. Please, Elizabeth.
Yes, first a comment. I've done research on journalism for the past decades, and I found that there is an inherent, there is a kind of dilemma within journalism that I know from my own time as journalist too. And that is that on one side, you should be impartial. Yes, that's true. On the other side, there's also a journalist ideal of taking the side of the oppressed, the people who are the poor, the sufferings, the marginalized. And those two ideals live side by side, I think, inside most minds of journalists. And we have to select at times to practice one ideal, and at other times to do the other. I totally agree with Mr. Mehran about that you have to report atrocities from all sides. I think that is crucial in a war situation. On the other hand, I think there are two types of journalists. For example, in the West now, and one train of thought, as it were, is that you can, if you declare your own intention. I mean, there's a very prominent documentary maker, a journalist in Norway, who says, well, I am a peace activist and I am a journalist. And then people judge him by being so. So they know, okay, he's a peace activist. I can judge him for being maybe too pro-peace or something, but he declares himself and then he's open about his own standpoints. I think it's worse if you promote certain standpoints, but you're not open about it, because then it's more difficult to judge. So, I mean, you have these types of journalists also within respected journalist corps of Norway, at least. So those are the people who openly show their engagement. They're perhaps not the majority. And then again, to Mr. Mehrdad, you say you write editorials, and in the editorials, of course, you're very free to promote a standpoint. And it should be so, because the editorial is the voice of the newspaper, which is free to then take a stand against atrocities, be it from their side or from that side. And that is totally relevant. So I think at times the ideal impartiality is very important. But on the other hand, it can sometimes conceal, as you also admit, Mr. Mehran, conceal that there is a hidden standpoint, there's a hidden agenda. That's what makes journalism studies so complicated. That's what I wanted to add. But the sort of the conflicting ideals, we shouldn't forget. And to take the stand of the people who are the marginalized, the voiceless, and so on, is part of the job. And that might at times lead to being accused of not being impartial, but all the same, these accusations might come from the very powerful people who don't want these voices to reveal the atrocities made by the important ones, by the powerful ones. So I think sometimes the claim for impartiality is a critique against journalism with the ears close to the ground. That was just perhaps not a question, but more of a statement from my own experience.
Okay, thank you. I'm done. I will mute myself.
I forgot to thank you for your lecture. I think it was very good, and I hope that if your master thesis is available somewhere, it would be great. And now there was one question I wanted to ask, and that is,
for this.
It's a question because it has to do with the December session where we're going to social media. I don't know if the Taliban read Ash the Sob, for example. So it's a question to you, Mr. Mehrdad, particularly. I don't know, to also address Sharif Amiri, whether they watch Tolo TV. But is there a way through social media to reach through to their social media and say, how do you feel about killing your sisters and brothers, or the local people who are not the mighty and powerful? But I mean, this was revealed in a text yesterday, but is there a way to get through to these people and challenge them on social media? Through the official media too, of course, but I don't know. I just want to know whether there are ways to reach their ears and eyes.
Who should answer first? Who should respond?
You, please.
You
You,
okay?
Now
Mehrdad.
you are doing this.
Very good. Of course, actually, a couple of weeks ago, we had a WhatsApp chat. We have an ironical WhatsApp chat. It's sarcastically dealing with daily politics in Afghanistan. One was about the Taliban delegation in Doha. Unfortunately, and it is very quite popular in Afghanistan, our WhatsApp chat. So the people react massively to that. They share it in a large scale. And we had a reaction from Taliban that please remove that. And we had lots of threats on our Facebook page that we will send you a car bomb and you will be our next target. But it was not officially from the Taliban side. But of course, there are lots of people who are supporting their agenda. And when they see something against them, they react in support of them. And officially also, they contact us and they said, we see towards our leaders as holy. They are holy for us. They are untouchable. So take care of yourself in this complicated situation. So we were under pressure and we were forced to remove our WhatsApp chat from our page, unfortunately. So of course, nowadays we are feeling lots of threats, lots of pressures from all sides. Unfortunately, nowadays, Mrs. Ayubi, can you please? We are. So the problem is that the threats are now, the attacks are now unclear. We don't know who is doing these attacks because no one take the responsibility clearly. So, but during on daily basis, they are targeting civilian places like universities. They are targeting journalists, and they are not at the same time. They are not taking the responsibility. So we are in a very complicated situation. We are under threat. We are under pressure, and in sometimes it resulted in self-censorship. We are taking care of many things nowadays, and it has affected the freedom of speech in Afghanistan.
Thanks, Mehrdad Saib. Regarding the question of Elizabeth, if any mainstream media or social media challenged Taliban's spokespersons as well as leaders, I think a good example is an interview with Dr. Naeem, the spokesperson of Doha office of Taliban by Tulu TV. If Sharif Amiri is here to say something about this. The interview was done by Karim Amin. Amiri Saib, are you here?
Yeah, sure. For the first time, I challenged Abbas Sanagzai in the first round of Doha talks, where they signed the deal. I challenged him in a live interview, and it was the first time that Taliban leader, one of the leaders, came into the camera and doing live interview. For example, I asked him about the situation of after peace deal. I asked him that, will you agree that in a football stadium, women come and watch the football game? He just shocked. And he answered very not clearly. So we challenged him. And one of the other, when I saw the Taliban in Logar province last year, I went to their territorial in Logar province, and when I met their commander, he hugged me and told me that every day and every night you're calling us the puppet of Pakistan and ISI. So come now and let's see who is the puppet of Pakistan. I laughed and said that I'm right, you are doing that. So they do not accept that these challenges, and it's very a tough job to convince them that you're doing not good job. And when I asked from their commanders that why you are doing this fight against your own brothers, and you're Muslim and they're also Muslim? Why you're doing this? He said that God didn't want me that I'm still alive. I must be shaheed for now. They want to be killed as soon as possible. So how can you convince such people? It's a very tough job.
And if you can say something about Amin Karim's interview, Amiri Saib, I think it was also very challenging. Apart with
Definitely,
this, like
definitely.
a
Karim
question,
Amini, yeah,
yes, please.
challenged him so many times, and even government side also used as a propaganda from that interview as well. So it was a very challenging interview from him about the human rights, about the women rights, about the democracy, and in every aspect of the future of Afghanistan. Karim Amini challenged the spokesperson of the Taliban.
One question I remember was that uh, during your attacks, civilians are being killed, and then the spokesperson say it is war, everyone is killed.
Definitely.
We are not distributing.
And also,
Yes, please.
sorry, Khalwat Sahib, I remember
No problem.
one of the questions that Karim Amini posed was this, that now that you have reached a peace, an agreement, in fact, with the United States of America, and they're trying to pull out their forces, and you're not, for the past 6 or 7 months, you have not killed or have had even a single attack on them. And whoever you're killing is your own people, the Afghans, the Muslim people of this country. Why do you do that? That was a brave question, I think, and he couldn't have a good and appropriate answer.
May I have a comment?
Yes, please. And then after I decide, I would like also ask Danish Saib, Karokhel Saib, to say his story. I am sure he has a good story in this regard. Please, Idris Saib.
I have a comment on two things. First, that I think Mr. Zabit asked about challenge on social media. I want to say that when I was in Qatar, Doha, I find that Taliban, they are just screening, and they are checking every single Twitter account and Facebook account of journalists, especially those journalists that they are prominent, they are senior. And they asked me, because I'm not senior, and I was not senior, I was just a new, a young reporter who came late in this area. They asked me why I don't have one of the Taliban. They asked me, I did not see you before, and we don't check your Twitter account and your Facebook. I told them that, are you screening us? Are you checking us? They told me, and they named my colleagues that they are senior, I find that they are checking every day. Our colleague, especially that those who are senior, for example, right now we have Mujib Mehrdad here, we have Sharif Amiri here, we have Najiba Ayubi here. They are checking. So I want to say that there is no need to challenge them on social media by post, by any special post. They are seeing what we do, what we publishing. And the second thing about the question, that what is the answer for from Taliban, that why they killing the when they killing the civilian. I asked this question many times from them, from different people, especially those who are so-called leader in Doha, off the record and on the record, they told me that it is war. And also یک مسئله استفاده میکرد میگفت که در جنگ حلوا تقسیم نمیشه اگر دوستای ترجمه بکنن. They told me that it is war. In war there should be sacrifice.
We are not sharing cookies.
Yeah, we are not sharing cookies. It's fine. We are not sharing cookies. So I think it is ideal. It is their ideology that keep them that they think that they are true. For example, the many time when I asked them why you're killing people, why you're doing fighting, and they was answering me by the question from me, and they were asking me why you're not doing jihad, why you're just sitting in Kabul in meantime that there is kafir and there is a kafir government, why you're sitting with doing nothing. They answered me many times with this. They answered my question with this answer many times, that when I was asking them that why you're doing fighting, although you know that you are those who you are killing, they are civilians, they are child, they are women, and they were saying that it's fight. At fight we are not sharing cookie, and they were asking me that why you are not fighting, you are not doing jihad. It is ideological problem that keep them to think that they are true, we are wrong. Thank you.
Thank you, Idris. Danish Saib, are you ready for the narration of that story you have? And also Najiba Jan, Ms. Najiba Ayubi, you are also challenging Taliban, I'm sure. After Karokhil, it is your turn.
Okay. Thanks. There is several example which is we challenge Taliban, and I will tell you the Taliban strategy. If there is, for example, a story against about them, and you write to them like, please, answer or response to this question, then they will quiet. They not respond to that. For example, recently we have a two story, one from Herat, I think 3 days ago, which is the warning, the Pashdan dam, which is under reconstruction. Those security forces, and they put pressure on that company to pay them 10% of the whole contract money. Before to release the story, we send them a question, tell them why you take this money from that company. For today, they not respond, and then we publish a story and wrote that Taliban is not answer or response to those questions. I will give you another example. During 2019 presidential election, we sent the same question to Taliban as well, about that their agenda for the women, their agenda for the education, their agenda for economy of the country. Like those questions we sent to our candidate as well. Honestly, their response, there was no response from their side, because when you try to ask them tough question about how to rule the country, for or what is their agenda for the country, they not have anything, they didn't know. There is no doubt Taliban is a group which is not have a political, they are not political people, they are just killing the people, and that is why Afghan media in general, ask them tough question, but those questions, as my colleagues say, when we ask those questions, then our security become under target.
Thank you, Khair Saib. And your security was under target, as you define it this way, maybe because of that questions. I would confess here that as much as I was witnessing Sharif Amiri's through televisions, Amiri's challenging Taliban was very rare in television in Afghanistan. So Amiri said, I did not ask yourself, and instead I asked about your colleague, but it doesn't mean I don't remember the way and the work you have done. And now, Ms. Ayubi, Najibajan.
Thank you.
Ms. Ayubi, can you hear us? So she was just seconds back online and on video, but now, Najibajan, can you hear us?
Yes.
Hello.
Your mic is mute. Yes, now it's okay.
No, it is not mute. I can hear you very clear.
Yeah, it is because my mic is not muted.
Sorry, I didn't hear. Can you repeat, please?
The question is that I'm sure you have challenged Taliban through your work in interviews and also through the phone calls that you received from them. So can you tell us a story about this?
Yes, of course. It have a long story. We, from few years back, when Taliban asked us for the tax from Ghazni province, from our Ghazni radio, we had a discussion with them, with few of them, because they asked us for tax. They said, as much as you're giving tax to government, you have to pay to us. We start negotiation on that time. But during the negotiation of Doha, when the negotiation started, we had interviews with them, with different member of negotiation team of Taliban. We have challenged them with the questions. And directly when I was in Doha, I told to them that what you think about the development which happened in Afghanistan during this last 20 years. Do you recognize that? Do you know there is a lot of change? And do you consider this change when you want to join government or the negotiation have a result? Do you want to consider these issues? This was a question, and also our other friends challenged them with different questions, and we asked them when we were in Doha that you are killing people because of power, and this is not good. And they said, no, we are not doing this. Like this, we had also different time these interviews and questions as
well. Thank you very much. If I may, I could request everyone to put her comment at the chat before leaving, because we are witnessing some people that they left. Any other question or comment, please?
Can I just add, when I asked this question about social media and challenging the Taliban, I was perhaps thinking more of the local people than the leadership, because I realized that there's a lot of brainwashing going on here and a lot of ideology, as you rightly say. But the question is, as I said yesterday, and I'm repeating myself, but very many local Taliban fight very close to their own village. I mean, they're locally recruited. And I was wondering among them whether there is still a possibility to challenge them on some kind of humanitarian ground, or if they all carry the same ideological death wish to be killed in battle and then reach Jannah and so on. So because I believe everybody will be pressurized by the rank and file and by the grassroots, even perhaps Taliban, but I might be wrong. But I'd still like to challenge you on to get somebody for either the December or January session who is, if not close to the Taliban, but somebody who has experience of their thinking. And it could be interesting to have somebody like that on the program and discuss with, I guess it's not a her, it would be a him. But yeah, it's just a thought.
One thing, Elizabeth, during the Taliban, I'm sorry, Idrissa, during the Taliban, one of the Talib members in the Afghanan in Shir, the road just nearby the Afghanan, was was beaten up a Hindu, one of our countrymen, that he had a shop nearby. And just lashing a Hindu, lash means shalok zadan, and was saying, please convert to Islam. And the Hindu was shouting and just screaming, what should I do to be a Muslim? And then the Talib was not able to recite the first word or the first kalima to say to him to be converted to Islam. The normal Taliban's members on the ground, they are like this. They have never ever have any ideology, and as much as you're asking these questions, then that much soon the person who asked the question will be killed.
I want to say that a memory from my village about it may help Ms. Elizabeth to understand the situation. The village in my village is in western of Jowri district in Ghazni province. So we are near the Khak Afghan district, which is controlling by the Taliban, somehow by the ISIS. So I have a memory from maybe 6 years ago that one of my village boy, and he is my friend, he is expert in installing dishes in one village in district of Pakistan, which is controlling by Taliban. They invited him to install dish for them. Once he got there and he installed 2 dishes in one village there, and after that many other Taliban were inviting him to go and install other dishes. And once Taliban know and recognize that he is doing and installing dishes, and they invited this boy and they arrested him and punished them by 100 lashes. And he asked, why you're doing like this? And the Taliban told him that you are doing kafir work here, in your spraying a kafir act between our village. It means that the Taliban, in one hand, when they are doing mind brainwash, in other area, they are keep people away from technology, keep people away from smartphone. Even in many places that I know, the Talib soldier has no right to use smartphone. If they have a smartphone, they have no right to use internet. So it is a paradox. In meantime, there are many Talib people that they have Facebook, they are using SOYOP, they are using Facebook and Twitter, social media for SOYOP. So it is, I think, it is by the ijaza, and it means that they are taking permission. They are taking permission and they are using social media. Otherwise, they are not allowed to use a smartphone and to be on internet and social media. Because of this problem, in meantime, many of Talib member, as well as Mr. Khilbatgar said, they are not educated to read the text. They just can say video and audio, but they cannot read the text. And meanwhile, they have no permission to use social media and internet. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are just closing to the end of the session. If there is no any other question or comment, I would like to again thank Mr. Mehran for the brilliant presentation, informative and full of knowledge, and the participation of everyone at the session. I think it was very good and I learned a lot myself. Everyone want to leave the session needs to put a comment or maybe a critical question or any other thing they want to write, and we will see you all tomorrow at 1:30 Kabul time.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Have a good time.
Please be concrete also in your evaluation. It wouldn't hurt if you would mention some concrete examples of what you appreciate, for example, or what could be better. But I enjoyed the discussion very much myself. I also.
Okay, thank you. Have a good night.